All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for listening. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody has a peaceful holiday with family. And that's a very purposefully phrased holiday wish. I hope that your time with your family. First of all, I hope your holiday is with family. And secondly, I hope that your time with family is peaceful and happy, and I might even go so far as to say healing, on an interpersonal level. So those are my wishes for you this holiday. I was just listening to Robert David Steele, and I was disturbed to hear that he's a rabid Netanyahu critic. He does not like Benjamin Netanyahu at all. And I love Benjamin Netanyahu. I've heard him speak in person. He was just an amazing speaker. But I have to confess that Netanyahu is part of that old guard, I mean, he's part of the 80s, 90s, early 2000 guard of Bush, Clinton, Reagan, and those are not good people. The Bushes have been revealed as completely evil, a totally evil clan of people. Clintons are just as evil. Being a right winger, I want to say that they're more evil, but now the Bushes have been revealed as to be extraordinarily evil people. So if Netanyahu is tied up with them, then I guess he has to be brought into question in ways that he never has been before. The rise of Alex Jones, who is credited with getting Trump elected, basically exposing, evil cabals at the top of every nation. Not, it's no longer nation against nation. It's more elite against people, which, with a lot of credit to Alex Jones, I mean, that is basically the lesson of history, I think. That it's not, when you talk about the Russians against the Croatians, or the Slovaks, or the French against the English, or the English against the Germans, or the Chinese against the Japanese, or whatever. I mean, it's never. That's just the front story. What did Napoleon say? I just heard this today, or maybe yesterday, that history is an agreed upon lie, or lie. No, history. He said it a little bit more elegantly than that. He said that history is lies agreed upon. So, I think that the more accurate understanding of everything really is that it's always been the elite against the people, and dividing people on nationality, dividing people on race, dividing people on religion, and in our age, it's dividing people on gender, and dividing people. I mean, believe it or not, I mean that's just a sign that the whole world, and including the elite, are becoming more and more sophisticated when they can create new lines of division that never existed before. My opinion. So they divide people on. They're dividing people on gender. They divide people on what has become known as sexual orientation. And then they create entire new classes of people, transgenders, and I'm sure they're going to be. I mean, they have 52. What is it that Governor Cuomo just approved in the state of New York? The classification of 30 plus genders or something. Facebook has 152 genders. So suppose I've never seen it with my own eyes, but that's what I read. There's just absurd genders like video gender. If you like video, so my gender is video. If you like computers, I'm a computer gender. If you like, it just gets to the point of really quizzical absurdity, right? I mean, 100, when you get up to, anything beyond two genders is, It just, anything beyond, okay, let's be generous and say 5, okay? Anything beyond 5 genders is just like, wait, what? You know? I mean, it just becomes blatant at that point in time that they're just inventing new lines of division on which to divide the public so that they can ramp up their divide and conquer campaign. You know, so anyway, I was listening to Robert David Steele, and he was talking about. I'll link to his video here where he talks about this stuff. And he talks about the bankers. See, he uses his terminology is more bankers. I think that ultimately it's very possible that the elites. To say elites versus bankers is synonymous, because I heard once that Apple and maybe Microsoft as well, they both had more cash than any bank and any insurance company. And insurance companies, I mean, you know, they're famous for cash because they are regulated, you know, to have cash. It's a requirement. They have to have cash. Otherwise, in a catastrophic situation, they wouldn't be able to meet their, you know, their obligations. Their obligations of indemnification. They can't pay for the things that they promised to pay for when they collect the premiums. So that effectively makes Microsoft and Apple a bank. If you have more money than a bank, aren't you kind of a bank? I mean, it just becomes a technicality at that point, you know. So I think that point is interesting. But he's saying that all wars are you know, wars are always fought because a banker somewhere profits from the war. You know, and my understanding is that bankers profit regardless of who wins. It doesn't matter. And as a consequence of that, bankers are funding both sides of the war. And then if that's the case, then it stands to reason that the longer the war drags on, the more the bankers profit. So now you have somebody who has a vested interest in the war not ending. Now, that can't possibly be good, right? That can't possibly be a good situation when people are profiting from death and destruction. But you know, and I don't live under the delusion that this is new. I don't live under the naive illusion that this is not the way it always has been. My assumption is that this is the way it always has been. You know, because even if your weapons are sharpened sticks, you know, and that's a little bit of hyperbole, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not that much of an exaggeration, because you know, there have been times when that's been the case. But even if that's your weapons, you still have to have funding for the soldiers to sharpen the sticks. And that sounds a little bit absurd, but I mean, you have to have something with which to sharpen the sticks. You have to have some metal object or some metal machine, you know, and then you have to have people to collect the sticks. And if you have people, well, you need clothing, and you need food, and you need supply lines, and you need. So I mean, war has always been about finance, I suppose. That's my understanding. So, but he said something in there that really got me sparked up. He said that his open source everything, which is his cause that he, along with Cynthia McKinney, champion. Okay, open source everything is basically, you know, it's, you know, I don't really know what it is, to be honest with you, but the example that he gives is that the Caterpillar Corporation creates a tractor that costs $250,000, and the software that runs the tractor is proprietary, such that the farmers are not allowed to even try to repair the tractor themselves. Or maybe that's not 100% accurate. Maybe the more accurate way to say it is that the software that runs the tractor is proprietary, such that Caterpillar is the only they're the only people that have what it takes to repair the tractor when it breaks down. So either way, the effect is the same. So his proposal is, no, let's make everything open source. Everything will be module based, so that if something breaks, you can just unplug that module and plug a new version of the module in, and anybody can make that module. So I don't know exactly how I don't know how his cause addresses the issue of patents, and because patents are critical to corporate profit, and you can't have research and development if you don't have profit, and research and development is notoriously expensive because you have these labs that are operating for 10 years and they never produce anything that's of any good or commercial use. So I don't know how that works, but I think, knowing listening to what I've heard him say so far, I think he would say, well, basically shut down everything that's proprietary and make everything open source. Another example he gave was the fact that one of the government agencies, I don't remember which one, asked for a report on the state of the economy in, I don't remember what country, let's just say Colombia. Well, they put a bid out to the big government contracting companies. I'm trying to remember which one this was. It was one that I was very familiar with, and you probably would be too. I wanted to say Dun & Bradstreet, but that doesn't make any sense. It wasn't Dun & Bradstreet. I think it was the one that Edward Snowden was working for. I just can't remember the name of the company. But Dun & Bradstreet is the only thing. Dun & Bradstreet is the only thing that comes to mind. But that doesn't make any sense. Come on, man. I know it's right on the tip of my tongue. Whatever it is. I want to say that it was who Edward Snowden was working for, and my car's overheating again. But I really don't think it was Dun & Bradstreet. But it was one of those companies that has two names, like Edward Jones or something like that, or two words in its name. But see, I can't go on until I think of this name. I'm OCDing on this name. Man, so frustrating. I can't remember. Anyway, so they came back and said, well, it'll take it's 1 man year of work. Okay, so it'll take one person a year to do the work, and which he explains and makes total sense. You can compress the time down just by adding people. So if it's 1 man year, you take 4 people, it'll take them 3 months. But anyway, and they quoted $250,000. Well, the person who requested the report didn't have that kind of money in his budget for this, so he called this guy, Robert David Steele. Robert David Steele said, well, I don't know, let me make a few phone calls and see what I can do. And so he made some phone calls, and then he called the guy back and he said, I can do it. I'll have it for you on Monday, and it'll be $250. So that's his example of open source everything. Now, the secret sauce behind this particular case of open source everything is the fact that the finance minister for the nation of Colombia had just retired and moved to Burlington, Vermont, or upstate New York or something like that. And Robert David Steele knew the guy, was friends with the guy, called the guy and said, yada, 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 so on and so forth. So that's an example of open source everything with respect to data reporting, economic reporting, toward the end of gaining access to data that you need, right? So I think that's pretty brilliant. I think that's pretty amazing. When you just follow the well-worn channels, it's very inefficient, and progress just kind of grinds to a halt. But if you open source everything, now how do you translate that into how do you translate that into industry? I don't know how to do it, but that's why he's a champion for this thing, and that's why this thing is a thing, because it's not well known. You know, I assume that I hope to be learning more about it as time goes on, but I would love to see how that translates over into the industrial side of things. I mean, that's got to be fascinating, you know. So he says, with open source everything, what he just claimed in this video that I'm going to link to, and I might be able to find the other video where he gives this example of this economic report on the nation of Colombia, and then, you know, the $250,000 quote versus the $250 quote as well. And if I can, I'll link that one as well. But he said, with open source everything, he knows how to provide every Somali citizen with a 2-story cinder block house, okay, a desalination station for endless fresh water, and a miniature hydroponic garden where they can grow edible food and also fish. And he said he could do it for $500, one-time payment, $500, everybody in the country. So, I mean, that sounds very plausible to me. I mean, stuff in Africa is super ridiculously cheap, you know, and it's expensive here precisely because of that, of the same reason that a report on the economic health of the nation of Colombia could cost $250,000 if somebody wasn't interested and curious and innovative about looking for ways to make it cost $250, right? The same exact reason. And we all know this happens. You probably see it at your own company. I was at a software function the other night. Actually, it was a 2 or 3 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, just the way time flies, and I have no awareness of it. But the guy said that with this particular software, Oracle Apex, he and his wife were pumping out applications left and right. I think they had produced 6 or 8 working applications for the government department that he works for, and it's something with Hillsborough County, and I can't remember what. But they had these other guys in there with this .NET framework, and they had like 6 guys, and in 3 years they had produced, something like 3 applications or something like that. So, the point is not so much that Oracle's better than .NET. I'm not trying to make that case because I'm not knowledgeable enough on both sides, and you do have to be knowledgeable on both sides. You can't just be knowledgeable on one side, because at that point you're just a salesman, right? You're not an advisor. You're just a salesman. That's not the point. The point is that the disparity in productivity can definitely be exponential when you're talking about people who don't know, or people who don't want to know because there's nothing in it for them to know it, or when people who are just kind of coasting along and doing what they know how to do with no desire or impetus or benefit or curiosity in learning how to do it a different way. The difference in cost and productivity can definitely be exponential. And if you like I said, I'm sure you've witnessed it yourself. And by exponential, I mean up to 1,000 times. What Robert David Steele says is that he can feed the world for 1/10 of what is commonly held to be the required cost. So that Caterpillar, or might have been John Deere, I don't remember what company it was. I don't want to get into proprietary situation with, whatever, this is better than that. That's not the point. I don't really care which brand is better than what brand. That doesn't matter, and that's not the point. The point is that that tractor that, is considered to be a $250,000 expenditure doesn't need to cost more than $20,000 if you strip away all of the established channels of production and distribution and proprietary sort of island defending, if that makes any sense. You defend your kingdom with service contracts and different types of promises you make people to guarantee them the business and whatever. So you sign it, you buy a product, and you sign a contract that only they will ever maintain the product, and so all that kind of stuff. And he was saying that the reason it will never happen in Somalia, or the reason it hasn't happened to date, is because it doesn't profit the banks. So here we are back at the banks again. Now, when you think about something, people reducing the cost of things by 90%, that's big implications, obviously, for the corporations. But by extension, it's also big implications for the bank. Well, at least with respect to the standard operating procedure, the common or the established modus operandi, right? The thing of it is, that's just amazing, is that, but if you go outside the modus operandi, right, then you're talking about going from selling 1,000 tractors to maybe 100,000 tractors, because people that could never afford a tractor can now afford a tractor. Not only that, but also B, people who never needed a tractor now need a tractor, because you not only made a tractor affordable, you made farming affordable. You made things affordable that the butterfly effect, it's like you made things affordable to people that they never even dreamed of doing before. But now, because things are possible that were never possible, now they start dreaming and start thinking and start endeavoring to do things that they would have never dreamed of doing before. So it's like that verse in the Bible that says, love your neighbor as yourself. People don't realize the practical, real world implications of that, such that if you do stop and think about it, and you have to take away your cynicism for a minute, if you're cynical, but if you start to love your neighbor as yourself, which means when your neighbor's roof is caving in, you go over and you talk to him about it, and you do what you can to help him with his roof, okay, or whatever. It doesn't have to be something as major as a roof. It could be something small. What's the implication? Well, the implication is now, but it's not just you and your neighbor. It's all of the neighbors and all of the neighbors. Okay, so now it's not just everybody's defending their little castle or defending their little island, which it means that everybody's taking care of themselves, which means everybody's taking care of themselves by themselves. Okay. And people get really good at that, and they become very proud and very arrogant. And the implications are just like, man, they're just like mind blowing. It's so mind blowing. It's hard to even talk about because you don't even know where to begin. But man, so now you have all the neighbors taking care of all the neighbors. So now everybody has 100 people taking care of them, in addition to them taking care of themselves, right? So you're one of the 100. So it's not like I'm going to sit on my butt. No, it's not like that at all. It's more like everybody's working, but they're not only taking care of themselves, everybody. So it's better. The wealth explodes exponentially, because not only is it more people taking care of every person, right? It's also the fact, the energy, right? And that energy has a lot of weird new age, and I do mean it that way for sure, but I don't mean it only that way. I also mean it like, haven't you ever had the experience where you're trying to do something, you want to do something, but you can't do it because you just can't do it, you're just stuck, but somebody comes and says something to you, and all of a sudden it just lights a fire, and you're like, yes, okay, I got it now. That was what I needed. I needed that word. you know? Or maybe somebody comes and helps you, and what they do is only 1/10 of 1% of the energy that's needed to do it, but it was the igniting 1/10 of 1%. It was the 1/10 of 1% that was the catalyst that got everything going. It was what they said to you or what they did for you is what made you believe that you could do it, and that's what really got you going. You know, so it's all of that times 100,000. It's all that times 1,000. It's all that time. So that's what's wrong with the bankers and the corporations, is they don't realize that they're shooting their own feet off. They're shooting their own faces off with this isolationist, with respect, not national isolationist, but their own interest with respect to their own interests. It's like, it's the same principle of loving your neighbors as yourself. If they held everybody's interest as above their own, then not only would a world of good be done, but they would profit exponentially beyond. I got to stop talking because this is just amazing. I mean, it's amazing. People don't realize how poor they are. These bankers with $1 billion, these corporations with more money than they don't realize how poor they are because they don't understand how wealthy God is. You know? That's really the issue. We condemn ourselves to a life of poverty because we judge things according to our own perspective and our own judgment, and what seems like poverty to us is richness in God's eyes because it has nothing to do with that. And what seems like rich to us is poverty in God's eyes because for the same reason it has nothing to do with it. But at the end of the day, everything that we embrace is poverty, not only at a spiritual level, but also on a material level, because the material wealth that we're giving up because we don't embrace the spiritual principles of this loving your neighbor. Oh my God, I can't even talk about it. I just can't even talk about it. I can't. It's just too much. I mean, it's too much. It's just too much. So, and I'm up against the 30-minute bumper. So I got to go. But God bless everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye.